Welcome back, Pokemon trainer. Sorry about that, Eric. I apologize. So this is Joe Brown and Eric Bartlett joining you for round 2 coverage here at the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown, our Sunday midseason. If you missed anything yesterday, well, you're going to see something similar because we have right now in this matchup James Evans versus Paul Chua. James Evans actually won the Midseason Showdown Saturday. Actually, a really cool team. We saw him in Swiss, and then we saw him in, I believe, top 4 and finals also, and he's just such an impressive player. But it's hard to be as impressive as somebody as accomplished as Paul Chua.
Yeah, these two players, definitely some of the most skilled in the region, and not just the region, just the country. Loads of accomplishments between the two of them. James, of course, a former world champion in the seniors division. Paul Chua, one of the up there for regional titles. I think you said six regional wins. I know one of those came last season in the Ultra Series. So both players having a recent string of success. I know James top cut multiple regionals last year in the Ultra format as well. So not only do we have a regional rivalry, but we also have a match between some of the most skilled players in the region as a whole.
Well, what I want to know from James is if he obviously just keeps running the same thing. He's been running a similar team for most of VGC 2020 so far. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? You won the midseason yesterday. Like, do you really have any incentive not to bring the same 6?
I mean, like you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Of course, this is obviously a team that James is also very comfortable with, and I'm a very big advocate of playing teams that you're comfortable with, because I think that's one of the best ways you can do well in any sort of caliber of tournament. James knows this team inside and out, and he's, as we've seen, been able to pilot it to a very high level of success. Paul's team, on the other hand, remains a bit of a mystery to us right now.
Wish we could let you know.
Yeah, we'll find out pretty much as soon as you guys will, because I don't know if, for those unfamiliar with Paul, he is a fan of having his game in Japanese, and also thus must write his team sheet in Japanese, and neither of us can properly translate for you guys. So
I know this one. That's Shinotic.
Oh,
yep.
Is it?
It's going to be Shinotic.
Wouldn't
that be awesome if Paul just broke out like the memeiest team because we can't read it?
Yeah, I can't tell if you were joking, because beforehand you're just oh yeah, I can't read Japanese. Oh, by the way, actually this one is actually you keep going back and forth on me. It's I
feel like I've done enough Paul Chua matches that I've cast that I feel like I should know Japanese characters better than I actually do. I probably should have memorized what Groudon was by the time by him
after
using
watching
it so many times.
Well, we're just going right into the game here. I guess we're gonna find out once we get into the game itself rather than team preview. But wait, we switched.
No, so no, I think they are good at this point.
Oh,
yeah, because James
Evans
does have a 6 that he had yesterday. So we'll see what everyone's rocking as we're talking here. The Dusclops Melodic is the lead for Paul Chua on the bottom, and then Rotom Heat and Togekiss is the lead for James.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting lead for both players here. We have Milotic on the field. Milotic rising a lot in popularity after it did so well at the Dallas Regional Championships, going off against Rotom Heat and Togekiss. Meanwhile, Paul does have the potential Trick Room option with the Dusclops here, as James just going straight for offense right off the bat. We did learn yesterday that this Rotom Heat was holding the Choice Specs item, so obviously threatening a ton of damage here on a Pokemon like Milotic. Meanwhile, we have Togekiss here, which is a premier support Pokemon, but of course we're not going to see Togekiss in action quite yet, as we're going to switch out to Gastrodon, which in my opinion was the MVP of yesterday's Midseason Showdown. But this Gastrodon switch going to be followed up by a discharge from the Rotom Heat. Going to do a ton of damage to that Milotic, not getting any paralysis effects on either of these Pokemon. Milotic just going for an Ice Beam into the Gastrodon, does a decent amount of damage, while Paul is going to finish up the turn with a Trick Room.
And that's what Dusclops is good for, right? That's what he's, we even saw it in the first round of Swiss here today. Its ability to set up Trick Room pretty much almost guaranteed because of how bulky it is. Now the slower Pokemon on the field will be moving faster than the fast Pokemon for the next 4 turns, but that was a nice switch from James to bring his Gastrodon in on this turn, considering Gastrodon is such a slow Pokemon. And this Melodic is essentially rendered useless at this point because he can't use any of its water attacks because they'll be redirected into the Gastrodon. So even though Rotom is going to be moving slowly because there's Trick Room up, he's really not threatened by Melodic or any super effective attacks at the moment, which is why we see a Dynamax.
Yeah, we're going to see the Dynamax coming out. Going to be the Gastrodon. Gastrodon, a fantastic Pokemon to Dynamax. Going to be starting to throw off potentially those Max Quakes, which can do a really good job at boosting the special defense stat for both of these Pokemon, making Rotom just a bit bulkier and harder to deal with. You mentioned that Milotic has a bit of a tough time against Gastrodon because it's primarily attacking with water types, but we'll have to see if Milotic is going to be carrying a single target or perhaps a spread water type move to potentially bypass that Storm Drain. But Max Quake going to go into the Dusclops, going to be raising the special defense of both of these Pokemon, going to be doing a bit of damage. Dusclops able to take quite a bit of punishment as Milotic going to go for a Ice Beam, going to do a bit of damage to this Gastrodon. Meanwhile, Rotom is just going to be sticking in here just to keep throwing off those discharges, and one more discharge is going to be enough to pick up the knockout on that Milotic.
Yeah, we saw the discharge yesterday work really well for James. Obviously, Gastrodon being a ground-type Pokemon, it is immune to the discharge. So a Choice Specs spread electric attack that the Melodic is obviously weak to meant that it wasn't going to be able to stick around much in this game one here. The Tyranitar switch in here is interesting because that is another target that is potentially weak to the Gastrodon. So obviously he does get a special defense boost by the Sand being up as a rock type, but he is still threatened for super effective damage. If this Tyranitar is holding a weakness policy, as is a very common option for an item on Tyranitar, he might be wanting to bait the Max Quake out of Gastrodon to boost his attack and special attack by 2 stages, so he can go for some super powerful attacks. But this Hitmontop doesn't want him to get set up at all. Yeah,
this Hitmontop comes in, getting the Intimidate off. Hitmontop a fantastic option for it against the Tyranitar, being able to fire off that Intimidate, but also threaten super effective fighting type damage. And speaking of Tyranitar, like you said, Joe, he's going to go for that Dynamax. This would be a potential opportunity for Paul to proc a potential weakness policy. We know that we've seen, if we're familiar with any of the Dusclops Rhyperior shenanigans, we know that Dusclops normally carries a move that could potentially proc the weakness policy onto Tyranitar with a move like Bulldoze, which is exactly what comes out here from Dusclops. So Tyranitar going to shrug off that Intimidate, going to decrease its speed, which is fantastic under the Trick Room, but of course that means it's going to be lowering everybody else's speed as well. But the more important part is that weakness policy getting activated this turn, boosting the attack and special attack of this Tyranitar and putting it at +1 attack after the Intimidate drop. So now, thanks to Gastrodon finally getting hit by a physical attack, that is going to activate the Key Berry, and Gastrodon going for the Max Geyser this turn into the Dusclops, just going to finish it off there. But importantly, this is going to change the weather, which Tyranitar is not going to appreciate, because that means it's going to now not receive the special defense benefit from the Sandstorm.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal turn from James here, and we have this Max Knuckle, which is going to help Tyranitar increase his attack by one stage.
That looks like a critical hit.
With a critical hit, I was about to say, Hitmontop's pretty bulky, but he actually lived on one, which was HP. Awesome. The imaginary focus sash there. But I think James had a very strong turn by switching up the rain onto the field that got rid of the sand from Tyranitar. Now the Tyranitar is threatened, and he can't really switch out because he'd be costing himself his Dynamax because he didn't use his full 3 turns of it, and somewhat ineffective to switch out like that. But what counteracts with the Hitmontop Intimidate plus the Gastrodon Key Berry activation, it essentially neutralizes that Max Knuckle from Tyranitar and the weakness policy. I think he's up to, if he's hitting Gastrodon, it'll be a +1 attack instead of what he would have wanted it to be, which will be a +3. So I think James understanding how important Gastrodon is in this matchup, and this is Gastrodon's final turn of Dynamax, so he wants to make sure he makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, Paul's Dragapult is a bit in an awkward spot because it's still under the Trick Room, but I don't exactly hate his position here because depending on how much Gastrodon's able to do here to this Tyranitar, it could still be under huge threat from it. We're going to actually see Sucker Punch fail. That was likely going into the Dragapult that protected there, but Max Quake coming out from Gastrodon, going to go into the Dragapult's Protect, not doing a whole lot of damage thanks to the Protect stopping the majority of the damage from that Max move. Hitmontop is going to get that special defense boost. Meanwhile, Gastrodon will be receiving that as well. This leaves Tyranitar untouched for the most part, just going to go for the Max Rockfall into the Hitmontop, removing the threat of that 4x super effective attack. But Hitmontop deciding not to target down the Tyranitar, instead trying to get rid of that, or get some good damage on that Dragapult, but that is going to be costly, as that means Hitmontop is going to be knocked out by this Tyranitar.
I think James figured that his Hitmontop is on borrowed time on that match, having the 1 HP, so he went for the cheeky Sucker Punch, which obviously would be a super effective attack into Dragapult. But Dragapult trying to prolong its life out here, waiting till Trick Room ends, goes for the Protect, just try to get those turns over with. And the Tyranitar he pretty much had to go for the Max Rockfall there, even though it was inefficient by only doing 1 damage with your Dynamax turn. he needs to reset up the sand because of how potent of a Earth power or a Scald that can come from the Gastrodon. So he had to waste the turn essentially. So anytime you're not using your Dynamax to its fullest effect, it would be a win in James's book. Now he's up 3 Pokemon to 2. The Togekiss obviously is not really worried too much about a Dragapult. We'll see if the Dragapult even endures a hit at this point, or if it is a special variant of it. That'll be good information for James to be learning about the set. But this Gastrodon's probably sticking around.
Yeah, Gastrodon going to be able to get the recover off there, get itself back to a healthy amount of HP, but this Rotom, since it is Choice Specs, not going to have the ability to protect, so that just means a free KO for this Tyranitar with the Max Rock Fall, and this leaves Dragapult able to go for a Draco Meteor, so potentially a specially based Dragapult. Going to be firing off that Draco Meteor into the Gastrodon. Does not a whole lot of damage.
That's the benefit of 3 Max Quakes.
Yeah, after those Max Quakes, Gastrodon able just to tank that Draco Meteor. And what's unfortunate for Paul here is that he doesn't have any Pokemon to switch out, so Dragapult going to be at permanently -2 attack for the rest of this game. Attack for this game.
And so I misspoke. He had two Max Quakes.
Right. One of those is Max Geyser.
So this Gastrodon is just able to recover up every single turn. He has 2 boosts to his special defense. He's got a boost to his defense because of the Key Berry. It's just, and now he's got a Togekiss that can follow me things away or use a Dazzling Gleam since both of Paul's Pokemon are weak to Fairy here. This Gastrodon joined the battle on the first turn, and it has not left the field, and there's really been no reason for it to, as it's not been threatened too much. I think Paul is going to have to come up with another game plan in Game 2 to try to take care of this Gastrodon.
Yeah, so Dragapult, now the fastest thing on the field, is going to be able to get a Shadow Ball into the Gastrodon, not doing a whole lot of damage. Now, this is the win con here for James Evans, going to be the Air Slash going into the Tyranitar, trying to get potentially a flinch, and this Scald from Gastrodon trying to get
a burn.
He does get the burn on the Tyranitar, so this is potentially a break for James here, as he's now been able to stop the T-Tar from attacking this turn, but also being able to mitigate its damage output by getting that Scald burn.
Yeah, that was huge. I think James is just covering all his bases there. 1, you can get an Air Slash Flinch. 2, you can get a Scald burn. You're still hitting it super effectively, but also, not showing the Dazzling Gleam there meant that he didn't feel like it was going to be enough to knock it out. This time around might be different, though.
Yeah, Dazzling Gleam now coming out from the Togekiss, goes into the Tyranitar, not quite enough to knock it out. Tyranitar able to get a Rock Slide off this turn, goes into the Togekiss and the Gastrodon. Togekiss just hangs on. Gastrodon not taking a whole lot of damage at all, but this is going to proc the weakness policy on the Togekiss. So Togekiss is going to be able to fire off a much more powerful Dazzling Gleams these upcoming turns. But now Gastrodon able to bypass the flinch effect of Rock Slide and get the Earth Power, knocking out that Tyranitar. And this just leaves the lonely, weakened Dragapult against the now boosted Togekiss and previously boosted on the defensive side Gastrodon.
James just completely ignored Dragapult on that turn. Obviously, he had his special attack drop from the Draco Meteor earlier on a couple of turns ago, so he knows it's really not too much of a threat on the field. I don't even know if a -2 Shadow Ball would be able to take down Togekiss or the Gastrodon with the special defense boost there. So James Evans, he's keeping the same consistent strategy. It must have had a good night of sleep. He knows his game plan going into Swiss today and facing off against one of the players, not just one of the best players within this region, within New York and New Jersey, but within the country and within the world. And he comes out on top in Game 1.
Yeah, I keep saying it. Gastrodon is the game plan for James Evans. I feel like every single set I've seen him. After watching yesterday, I feel like every set that I've seen casted with James Evans on, Gastrodon always ends up sticking around till the very end, and it ends up being a crucial part to executing his end game, as it's just able to effectively boost its defense stats to basically turn it into an impenetrable wall of a Pokemon. And combined with that Key Berry and all those Max Quakes boosts, we just saw how Paul was just not able to break through it, and with that Scald Burn on the Tyranitar to end that first game, Gastrodon was just able to tank the game out and just be one of the last Pokemon standing.
And by looking at Paul's team, it seems like his kryptonite could potentially be a really strong Pokemon that you can't knock out without a grass move, because when you look at his core, there's no hidden power in this game in Sword and Shield, so I don't believe any of his Pokemon would be holding a grass attack here. So he is going to have trouble hitting that Gastrodon for super effective damage, and especially when he Dynamaxes again, if that's what James opts for in this matchup, he can get the Max Quakes rolling to boost his special defense. He can activate the Key Berry if he's attacked, so he'll have a defensive increase on that side. But as of right now, Gastrodon isn't here. But what does Paul do to adjust in this matchup against these potent threats to force a Game 3?
So James once again leading with the Rotom and the Togekiss. Meanwhile, Paul switched things up a little bit, bringing the Togekiss instead of the Dusclops. I'm looking at James' side of the field, and I think this is a very, very optimal position for this Rotom Heat that is now able to fire off these Choice Specs electric-type attacks to either one of these Pokemon. And James also, as we saw from the last game, has the option of just switching that Gastrodon in and maybe just trying to go for these discharges.
Yeah, I feel a Gastrodon coming in, right?
Yeah. So the Dynamax coming in from Paul's side, going to Dynamax. I would think that this would be the Togekiss potentially. We still don't know exactly what item this Togekiss is holding because it is now new to the battlefield. But Togekiss going for the Dynamax here, gonna make it much more tanky against these electric type attacks coming out from the Rotom Heat. Meanwhile, on James's side, we're also going to see a Dynamax. I would anticipate this to be Togekiss as well because, you know, Rotom, if it does Dynamax, it does lose access to that boost from the Choice Specs, and we do see James's Togekiss Dynamaxing, so we're potentially going to be seeing the trading Max Airstreams here, both players trying to get the speed advantage on one another. Going to be good for this Rotom here, but Rotom choosing not to stick around, instead just goes for the Volt Switch into the Togekiss, doing a significant chunk to the Dynamax Togekiss, really showcasing the power of the Choice Specs there on that Rotom Heat, and this is going to be the pivot into Gastrodon as opposed to the other slot switching in, so this could free Rotom up for some extra damage. But Max Airstream coming out from Paul's Togekiss, interestingly moving before James's Togekiss, so potentially indicating that he won a speed tie or maybe he's just faster overall. And finally, the water type move on the Milotic going to be revealed. It is going to be that Muddy Water, so this would be able to bypass Gastrodon's Storm Drain, but this also means that you have to hit into Gastrodon's Storm Drain, so that's going to give it a special attack
accuracy
boost.
Drop, though.
Yeah, accuracy drop on the Togekiss. Doesn't matter for max moves, of course, as the Max Airstream. Just going to go into that Togekiss, getting a bit of extra damage, but now getting the speed boost on James's Pokemon.
Something we should keep a note on is just keep looking at the battle between the two Togekiss on the field, because if they keep going for Max Airstream, if Paul is consistently outspeeding, then that would probably allude to him having a faster spread on his Togekiss compared to James. But James knew he was not threatened from Paul's Togekiss because of the reveal of weakness policy on Tyranitar in Game 1. Obviously, that meant that the Togekiss could not have it, so he didn't have to worry about hitting it with that strong Volt Switch, making it any stronger.
Right. So Max Airstream coming out from Paul's Togekiss, once again being the faster Togekiss on the field, going to be further boosting the speed. We'll see the critical hit, the first of many, I'm assuming we'll see from Togekiss throughout the day. Getting another speed boost for this Milotic and also the Togekiss. Togekiss on James's side, meanwhile, going to throw off another Max Airstream there. Going to be just short of missing the knockout onto Togekiss, so this Togekiss on Paul's side will live to fight another turn. Togekiss on James's side getting the speed boost, and also Gastrodon. Meanwhile, Milotic just content to keep going for Muddy Waters. Doesn't really mind the Gastrodon just sitting there soaking up all those Storm Drain boosts, but getting another hit onto that Togekiss for a bit of extra chip damage.
And they have to worry, now we've seen 2 turns in a row, Paul's Togekiss outspeed James's, so if he is fast enough, or if he is faster, he can go for that third Max Airstream, which could potentially knock out James's Togekiss in Dynamax form. James might opt for a Max Guard on this turn if he's expecting the Airstrike to try to bait it out so he doesn't get that attack off. Yeah. But actually, it's the other way around.
Yeah, the Max Guard coming out from Paul's side, the faster Togekiss, as that's going to be able to negate the Max Airstream from James's Togekiss. And Milotic just going to throw off another Muddy Water, giving Gastrodon yet another special attack boost and doing some more chip damage to the Togekiss. Meanwhile, Gastrodon not taking any damage this turn, but actually healing some damage off this turn with that recover.
Pretty much like a featherweight fight these first couple of turns from the Togekiss. Gastrodon end up no worse for wear after 3 turns of Dynamaxes directly at it, being full HP at this point. The Togekiss, I would say, they're both in a pretty rough spot, but remember that James's Togekiss had an accuracy drop and seems like it's slower than Paul's, so maybe a Follow Me can be more important on this turn than trying to go for an attack, because you could 1, miss it, or 2, get outsped and be knocked out. That would be able to keep the Gastrodon safe from an attack from the Togekiss. And obviously this Melodic, it has Ice Beam, which would hit the Gastrodon neutrally here, but that's really not too much. He's going to need a better strategy than Melodic Ice Beam to take down a Gastrodon.
Yeah, but bypassing...
A critical help, though.
Yeah, it definitely, a critical hit will help out here, as Togekiss on James's side getting knocked out by the Dazzling Gleam on... Okay,
yeah,
so Milotic, we're going.
I think
Milotic just keeps going for the Muddy Water.
He covered a switch with the Muddy Water.
I was gonna say that he's probably thinking of a switch there, but Gastrodon just content to keep sitting on the field, able to get the knockout on Paul Chua's Togekiss, and now both players have lost their Dynamax Pokemon. They both lost their Togekiss, so no more Follow Me potential from either side. But now with the Trick Room not being in play, Dragapult is likely in a better position to be coming out here, especially of how well it takes on this Rotom Heat.
I can understand what Paul was going for there, because the Rotom Heat could have potentially switched into that slot who would resist an Ice Beam, so obviously Muddy Water would hit it super effectively, and you want to get as much chip as you can on the Rotom because it's such a threat. But there's really nothing stopping this Rotom from locking into Discharge on this turn to start wrecking havoc against the Melodic.
Yeah, this Dragapult now...
Oh, into the Protect.
Yeah, Dragapult deciding to target down the Gastrodon, hitting both of these attacks hitting into the Protect, but of course Muddy Water, a spread attack, going to be hitting the Rotom as well. This does a ton of damage,
that knocks
able
it out.
to just get a one-hit knockout. Rotom, this faster Rotom Heat, this more faster and offensively inclined Rotom Heat, not able to tank that Milotic's Muddy Water, and it's just able to get a crucial KO there.
From what I can hear from outside, I don't believe James was expecting that to knock out.
Yeah.
If you remember, the Melodic sneakily got 2 speed boosts from the Togekiss Max Airstreams under Dynamax, so he was faster than the Rotom. That's kind of the risk you run with Rotom Heat. He's better offensively. He has very strong pressure with electric and fire attacks, but he is weaker, or he's weak to those common attacks like water, where Rotom Wash wouldn't be, and that's the problem. Was he kind of underestimated Melodic speed, and I guess it's raw offensive presence, and it just got rid of Rotom for nothing.
Yeah, so now Dragapult goes for the Draco Meteor, going to finally hit into this Gastrodon. Gastrodon without
takes it out.
Yeah, and without any special defense boost, Gastrodon not able to tank this Draco Meteor from the Dragapult. So Paul Chua just able to get rid of Gastrodon and just get rid of the Pokemon that basically won the game last turn, and Hitmontop basically saying no more Muddy Water boost. I'm good with Muddy Water not hitting my Pokemon anymore, so I'm just going to go for Wide Guard. But that means Hitmontop not really able to get up and attack here, and this just leaves Paul Chua with 3 of his remaining Pokemon left.
Never revealed his 4th Pokemon.
Yeah, we never saw what he brought. Never saw if that was another adjustment from Paul, but I think Paul really adjusted well to that matchup there.
That was good. Can you believe Paul clicked Muddy Water in front of a Gastrodon?
He did it so many times.
Every single turn of the game, and won.
It was a risky strategy, but I see what you were saying there, potentially punishing a Rotom Heat Switch and a Rotom Heat Switch in at any time there.
There was no competitive boost.
Yeah,
Milotic just raw Muddy
Water, and it's actually just proved that how much of a threat it was to that incoming Rotom Wash. It was just able to take it out from full health.
That's the benefit you get when you actually connect on your attacks. It's a risk running Muddy Water because it's a spread attack that can potentially miss, but you do get the benefit of a potential accuracy drop. And I love Melodic. I think it has. In every format that it's been strong in, I've always been keen to using it because it has such great supportive options, being so tanky, but also sometimes if you let it get rolling, you can get. You can't let it stop sometimes. You might get, floating away, got caught in the surf.
Yeah, I think Milotic is just another one of those Pokemon in this format that has adjusted to using more of the spread type, or the spread attacks that it has available to it.
Uses Icy Wind a lot,
Yeah,
too.
Icy Wind, yeah. Muddy Water is a good option to bypass something like Gastrodon's Storm Drain, which we saw come into play, but also the plethora of Follow Me and Redirection, being able to redirect all the single target attacks. So I think Milotic is a good example of how much more prevalent these spread attacks have been in this format, and Milotic making full use of it as it's just able to completely ignore the Gastrodon that was sitting on the field.
And the Dazzling Gleam from Togekiss, right?
Yeah.
That's another spread attack. That's something we talked about in the post-wrap-up show yesterday, Eric,
Right.
where the prevalence of spread attacks in the VGC 2020 format, because there's so much redirection, there's so many abilities that are able to really render attacks useless, that those spread attacks, you really don't worry about it. And now, is Paul Chua going to have the same successful strategy of, just whittling away at the Gastrodon, taking care of the rest of the team and leaving the Gastrodon alone so that he can be potentially knocked out from a Draco, from the Dragapult, like waiting for that as a late game sweeper? We never saw Paul's fourth Pokemon in that matchup. Was it Tyranitar? Was it Excadrill? I probably presume it wasn't Dusclops, because usually you lead Dusclops if you are going to bring it. So James didn't get as much information as he would like. What he does know is that Paul's Togekiss is faster, and that this Melodic can wreck Rotom Heat if he's not prepared for it.
Yeah, so I was saying how advantageous in theory this position would be for Rotom Heat, because your choice specs, you have these very, very powerful electric type attacks you're able to throw out on both of these electric weak Pokemon. But like you said, we saw that Paul's Togekiss was faster than James's Togekiss, so he's able to get that max airstream off first. And speaking of max airstream, I think we're going to be seeing another Dynamax coming out from Paul's side. And yeah, Paul's Togekiss going for the Dynamax, going to be able to start throwing off those max airstreams, and going to be looking like a bit of a repeat from turn 1 of the last game, as Togekiss keen to just keep going for these these Dynamaxes these max airstreams.
Right. Yeah. It's tough with the double Togekiss on every single team. It's like you're kind of, all right, who's going to Dynamax first, or who, if you're going to follow me, I have to try to like remember trainer names or trainer their avatars, how they look, to see who's using it. But look at that. Is that the face of Mercy, do you think?
It does not look to be the face of Mercy.
Yeah.
This Togekiss is, especially with those weakness policy potential, this Togekiss is looking to do damage, and it's looking to do damage now. But
Thunderbolt instead of Volt Switch.
Yeah, I think that we didn't really get to see Rotom take advantage of this situation last turn, because it just switched out immediately. But able to get a big Thunderbolt, not going to be enough to knock out the Milotic, but max airstream coming out from Paul's Togekiss, going to do a ton of damage to James's Togekiss. And this Muddy Water,
gone!
Since Milotic was able to make it through the turn, it's able to get that Muddy Water off and just once again knock out the Rotom Heat, and also get another accuracy drop into the Togekiss, which is now going to finish off that Milotic with its own max airstream.
That's crazy how much damage the Muddy Water is doing. I would assume, obviously, since he is a choice specs Rotom Heat, he's probably running very offensive, glass cannon style. So yeah. It's not like he has much bulk that Rotoms can usually get to. So it might not be too crazy that these Muddy Waters are knocking out, especially since it has such a high base power. But it's still fun to see a Melodic knock out a Pokemon in one hit. And now Paul has offensive pressure with his Excadrill, and he is worried about the Gastrodon, but of course Paul can go for an Iron Head into the Togekiss that will activate the weakness policy. But at the HP that Togekiss is currently at, a combination of max airstream from Paul and an Iron Head would knock it out.
Yeah, and we might just see that happen this turn, as max airstream once again going to go into the Togekiss, putting it at just around 25% of its HP, once again boosting the speed of Togekiss, and now giving a speed boost to the newcomer Excadrill, which is going to go for that Iron Head. Going to be enough for the knockout there. So James once again losing his Dynamax Togekiss, and this leaves just Gastrodon on the field against both of these two Pokemon. But Gastrodon, like you said, has a pretty good has an advantageous matchup against this Excadrill, and just going to see a Scald going into the Excadrill, possibly hoping for a burn. This would be nice.
Does he get it?
No. He does not get the burn, so Excadrill is going to be able to live through this turn and get even more damage off.
So I would presume Togekiss has max guard, because he usually has Follow Me, which would turn into max guard. I feel like that would have been a really important turn to use max guard on, because especially since he went for the Scald burn play there, if you max guard, he double targeted into Togekiss, so there was no attacks that would have hit your field. And if you got that Scald attack and burn, that knocks out the Excadrill, and then you're in a much better spot. But instead, we have a forfeit, and we have Paul Chua at 2-0.
Yeah, James calling it quits early, just after losing that Togekiss and just having that advantage just so heavily in Paul's favor. He's just calling it quits and just saying, like, all right, I don't have the tools to win this game, and just giving the early victory to Paul, who is now advancing to 2-0.
looks like Gastrodon had a great day yesterday.
Yeah.
But he woke up on the wrong side of bed today.
He had a very good single game in this set. He did a lot in one set, but once Paul was able to figure out, okay, I have a way to get around this threat early, I can either ignore it and just have late game Dragapult, just clean it up at the end, or just not give it. I think
he did lose to a team without a grass attack. I'm just throwing it out there.
That's true, but I think the strength in Gastrodon is boosting its defenses rather than its offense. Yeah, because in that second game we saw Gastrodon's special attack just keep going up, but it never got a chance to take advantage of it. So it was just able to get knocked out once a faster Pokemon came in. So I think Paul being able to bypass and sort of weave around Gastrodon getting those defensive boosts really was key for him being able to deal with it.
Well, remember what worked so well for James in Game 1, and obviously we'll credit Paul, but we're just talking about the match as a whole. James, on turn 1, switched Gastrodon in so he could discharge with the Choice Specs Rotom. And then Game 2 and Game 3, he led Rotom Togekiss both times and then didn't make that switch that worked so effectively for him. So I'd love to, pick James's brain on why he switched up his winning strategy that was working out really well for him.
Yeah, but instead we're going to be picking the brain of Paul Chua in our winner's interview that is coming up after this round. So we will see you guys right back for an interview with Paul Chua.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. I am here with your round 2 winner, Paul Chua. Now, Paul, I really thought I'd be talking to James Evans for a third time after that game 1, but I want you to talk to me a little bit about your adjustments for games 2 and 3.
So the thing with the first game was that I felt like even if I had the Trick Room advantage, he had the Keyberry, Gastrodon, and Hitmontop, so that kind of neutralized the Tyranitar's weakness policy. So I realized after that I should probably just go like the faster way. Yeah, so I just went with like Togekiss Milotic, because the only thing that he had to stop my Milotic from using Muddy Water was his Gastrodon, but I could just use like attacking with like anything else and I'll be fine.
One thing too, I think, is he It seemed that he at first underestimated and then overestimated your Milotic. So talk a little bit about that Milotic knockout in Game 3 and how that kind of turned momentum for you.
So he said in the third game that he just attacked. He went for Thunderbolt because in Max Airstream with his Togekiss because he thought that his Togekiss would move first, so he would knock out my Milotic. But he got the speeds messed up, so I was able to Airstream first and get the Muddy Water knockout on his Rotom. So.
Now, your Togekiss being faster, I think, definitely was important for that game. And especially, too, I think in Game 1, there was that turn as well with the Hitmontop where you got the Max Knuckle crit and you didn't knock it out. Yeah. And a couple other things in terms of luck. When you're playing somebody like James, who I know you've played probably a million times before just based on locals and everything, how do you get kind of into your own space for that and, you know, worrying about something like luck when he's got a team that you might have to worry about maybe getting a crit in terms of winning, or even, you know, getting a Scald Burn and that's how you lose a game, something like that.
I mean, I just approach like every game like the same. So just figure out like what's threatening on their end, like just knock it out, and then you should have an easy time. So it's pretty much just like that with like everyone. Like the person doesn't really matter.
All right. Anything else you want to say? Anyone else you want to give a quick shout out to before we move on?
Shout out to Snow. I took his team, so. Oh, and Joe Brown, apparently. So
shout out to Joe Brown as well from me. All right, guys, that is going to wrap it up. We are going to move on to an analyst desk with an interview next round. We'll keep it a little bit of a surprise, but stay tuned. We will be right back.